Hello, you're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher, the programme that takes you to the heart of the story of what is going on in Israel and the Palestinian areas as we listen to the stories of Arab Palestinian Christians and Jewish believers who live there. My guest today is Riti Katz. She's Jewish. I met her in a noisy shopping mall on the outskirts of Jerusalem recently. I heard about her work as a teacher to both Jewish and Palestinian children and wanted to find out what motivated her interest in reconciliation. When Rita was 40 years old, she and her husband moved from America to live in Israel, bringing with them their 4 young children. For Riti, this was a huge and difficult move, as she now describes.
Well, the language was a problem, and the culture was a problem. And having small children without a car was a problem. And at the time, the threat of war was a problem. It's been 18 years now, and there were various incidents going on with stabbings and that kind of thing. So all of it was very, very different and very, very lonely. And it was hard. It was very hard at first.
Your children are now grown up. They're going through the army, which is mandatory for all Israeli young people. So you're having to watch your sons and your daughters go through army service. But at the same time, you have an enormous heart for the Arab people, the Palestinian people here in Israel. And you've made some major contacts, some good friends, haven't you?
Some of my very dearest friends, people who I consider brothers and sisters, very, very close friends, are Palestinians, Arabs. And it's a quandary. It's a quandary. We unfortunately need the army, and we can't not have the army, unfortunately, not yet. And it's a dilemma. There's no doubt about that.
Did you deliberately set out to meet Palestinian people, or did it happen by accident?
I'd have to say both. A very good friend that I basically met in the street at a park. Someone who I was initially afraid of, who became a very, very dear, and still is a very dear family friend. I didn't deliberately set out to meet him. In fact, I deliberately tried to not meet him. But there he was, and he continues to be a very close friend. And other people, yes, it was much more by design. So both.
You're also a teacher, Riti. You're teaching in 2 schools, 3 schools?
2 schools.
2 schools. You're teaching Jewish children and you're teaching Israeli Arab children.
Yes, I teach Palestinian kids in Bet Hanina, and I teach Jewish Israeli kids in the heart of Jerusalem. Both are wonderful. Schools are very different. In one school, I'm a special education teacher, and in the other school, I'm an English teacher.
So what goes on in your heart? How are you able to do this?
Kids are kids. They're just children. And there are wonderful children, and there are more challenging children. And this special education children that I teach are Palestinian children. My heart goes out to special needs kids, and some of them are more challenging, some of them are a little easier. They're just children.
You were telling me over a Diet Coke just now how there was a terribly sad situation, 2 sad situations after the Gaza conflict. You knew Palestinian children who'd lost their grandparents in Gaza, and you knew an Israeli neighbour of yours who'd lost her nephew. And there you were showing concern and grief. You grieved with both of them.
Well, grief has no ethnicity, and pain has no ethnicity. And loss is loss, and tears are tears. And so we weep with those who weep, and we rejoice with those who rejoice. And I, of course, much prefer rejoicing, but we have to be there when people are in pain as well.
One of your hobbies, Riti, is also to write. You write the stories of people. You're obviously a real people person.
Right. I love people. I'm not very technically or mathematically inclined. I love people. I love to be with people. I love to write about people. I love to talk about people. I love to talk with people, get to know people. It's all about people.
So let me ask you, Riti, what is your passion? What really is it that you're wanting to convey to those that you're working with, those that you're meeting? You're a believer as well. You're a messianic believer. How does it all fit together?
I pray that I can be God's heart, hands, feet, mouthpiece. I love to see people achieve their destiny. I feel like it's partly my destiny to help others to achieve their destiny. One thing I didn't tell you is that I'm right now taking a life coaching course, and I will be a certified life coach very soon. That's very exciting. And when I see kids who weren't able or had a tremendous challenge feel good about themselves and have their heads up high and walk out saying, yes, I can, rather than, no, I can't, then that's very, very gratifying to me. So if I can help people to understand the deep, deep, deep love of God, that they are in fact acceptable in the beloved no matter who they are, and to achieve their destiny, that's how I feel like I've achieved mine.
So you can tell me a lot of stories of how one simple act of kindness has done a lot to build relationships between people who otherwise wouldn't meet. For example, you're very involved with Musalacha, the organization concerned with reconciliation.
Yes, I love Musalacha. I believe, and I've said this before, that Musalacha is the heartbeat of God. That if we can't reconcile and we can't reach our hands out towards the other, then the love of God does not dwell in us. And we have to get to know the other. We have to walk a little bit in their moccasins. We have to give up our own ideas, perhaps, about what we think is right in order to embrace the experience of the other. People's experiences aren't right or wrong. They're just simply their experiences. We need to honor that and respect that. And there's also something holy about that. There's something very holy about the experience of the other.
When your children hear what you've been doing during the day, your children who are in the army, how do they cope with their mother, who is befriending the enemy?
My children don't consider the Palestinians the enemy. They were raised with Musalacha, with children from the other side, with a very close friend who's a Muslim. So they do not consider the Palestinian people their enemy. They consider those who would take anyone's life, radical elements on either side, the enemy. So they're fine. They're fine with me going out and enjoying myself with Palestinian kids or Jewish kids or whatever I do.
And when you think of your children who are currently serving in the army, what goes through your mind on a day-to-day basis? Because it must be a very heavy thing having your youngsters, aged 18, leave home and suddenly having to mature, carry a gun, take up arms.
It's very difficult. It's very painful. It's very difficult. I feel, on one hand, very conflicted. On another hand, very proud. My heart's full with lots and lots of different emotions about it. As I said, I think the Army at this point in time in history is something that's very necessary, and we need to have a strong Army because we need to defend ourselves. And yet, I believe and I hope that I've raised my children in such a way that they won't do anything that, in fact, I know that they won't do anything that would violate their own consciences. Of course, I worry. I worry a little bit, but I try not to. I'm basically optimistic and believe that things will be okay, ultimately.
Would you say that you are unusual here in Israel, carrying such a big heart for both peoples who live in this land?
Wouldn't I like to think that I'm so unusual and unique? And the truth is no. I do not think that I'm unusual nor unique. There are other people, those who are believers and those who aren't believers, who do much, much more than I do, who reach their arms out and their hands out and are politically active and socially active and do a great deal more than I do. I do a very small little thing by teaching 2 days a week and by teaching at the other place 2 days a week. And I have some friends that's all I do. It's not a really big thing. And no, it's not unique. Lots of Israelis and lots of Palestinians have enormous hearts, and I think that most of us really do want peace.
You're full of hope, Riti. As you say, you're an optimistic person, but it's not grounded in emotion, is it?
No, it's not grounded in I don't think so. I hope not. I think it's grounded in reality, that ultimately I believe that this is God's heart, and if we walk towards the brighter day, then it will happen. We have to make it happen. We're not Calvinists, and I'm not, one of these inshallah people necessarily. There's a dynamic that I certainly don't understand very well, but about, as I mentioned, being his hands and feet and heart, I think there's something that he expects from us. And then he does the rest of it, but I think that we have to create the life that we want for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren. We have to create a society that's just and that reaches its hand out. We have to create a society that we can be proud to live in. We have to create a society where we reach our hands out to other people. As I said, other people do much more than I. I'm a very, very small part of what I do. But we all have to do our part to create the kind of society that we hope to live in and that we want our children to live in.
Riti Katz, a Jewish believer living in Israel, sharing her story. And you're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. If you have found Riti's story challenging and would like to know more about the lives of Jewish and Arab Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the West Bank, then let me tell you about the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of these people. If you would like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either visit our website www.olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, P.O. Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.